a definition, I always bring it down to the concept of balance. So balance of the mind, the body, the spirit. So the physical and the spiritual, and combining that with everything in our lives. So having the stability of that balance is what mental health is all about. So just like we have our physical health, which means, you know, eating well, sleeping well, exercise, where you take medications, or whatever requires you to have good physical health, there's also the mental health, which means working with your mind, your body, and your spirit to have a good balance of everything.
Now, why is it considered a taboo?
Well, in the greater North American society, we have moved away from the concept of taboo, I would say, much more so in the last 8 to 10 years. Like when I first started working, mental health in itself was still very much taboo, and we don't talk about depression or anxiety or depression, these types of challenges. Unfortunately, it did have to take there were a few celebrity deaths and suicides that happened over the last few years where people really started to question and started to talk more about it. That's in the general North American society. And so the taboo, I find, has become less, in the misconceptions and the misunderstandings. However, when we bring it down to the Muslim community or the diverse ethno-cultural communities, we're still very much far behind in terms of understanding what mental health is, but what mental illnesses are as well. Because we just defined what mental health is. It's about that overall balance of everything. Then there's mental illnesses, right? So when we get into mental illnesses, this is where the taboos are. Because when you describe what mental health is, well, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know, have an overall balance, that makes sense, it's clear. You know, we all try to do that, but we all, it's very hard to find that balance. When we don't take care of our stress levels, and we all have stress, whether you're a student at university, whether you're a mother, a caretaker, whether you're a father, whether you're a husband, whether you're a child, all of us have some kind of stress that affects us. Now, when you don't take care of that stress, what happens? It can trigger to potential mental illnesses. So we all have our own stress response. We all have our own ways of dealing with stress. We all react to stress differently. And if we don't take care of it, then it could trigger into something that we innately already have. So this is where genetic nurture and nature could happen. So before we actually answer that question, we need to understand a little bit of the background of mental health, mental illnesses, to understand why we have these misconceptions. So this is what I'm trying to describe right now. So with that, when we have a better understanding of how we individually respond to stress, how these challenges affect us, again, because we respond differently, then we can understand taboos. Because again, if you break a leg, right? If you break a leg, what do? You go to the doctor, you get an x-ray done, you get your foot or your leg casted, and then, you know, medications to deal with the pain, and you know you have to take, let's say, time off work, and your physical function is not going to be the same as when you don't have a broken leg. That we understand, that we agree with, that we have no issues with. Yet let's say your spirit is broken. Let's say something happens that triggers sadness within you that lasts for a longer time than usual. Then you don't take care of your hygiene. Then you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well. You're not able to be at your full potential like you usually do. These are signs and symptoms a little bit of depression, for example. Yet people will not take care of themselves, or perhaps they won't talk about things, or they won't get help. Because why?
Because of the community and the taboo.
And the taboo of what? There's fear, there's misunderstanding of what mental health and illnesses are. And also, people are ashamed, they're worried about talking about things that are very private. And in our communities, we're very much about hush hush, keep things to yourself. We don't talk about these problems, right? And people are always afraid of people finding out about themselves, but there's no issue with, let's say, bragging about their diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, or, you know, like I said, breaking a leg or an arm. They're like, you know, get cast or get pity. People will come over and take care of them, help them. But as soon as we get into mental illnesses, the fear comes in because we don't understand. We have the misconceptions. And again, people are worried about what are people going to say. So this is a little bit part of it. And as I was saying, we have this more in our communities, much more so, because there's so much gossip that happens in our communities, and people are just afraid of people finding out and also the idea potentially when it comes to marriage, when it comes to potentially having children, is this something that is hereditary? Are you going to catch it like a cold? All these misconceptions and whatnot. Depression. We're going to take a look at stress, anxiety, suicide, self-esteem, confidence. We're going to take a look at domestic violence, violence against women, abuse, child abuse. We're going to take a look at cross-cultural and generational clashes within the elders and the young. We're going to take a look at identity and what does that mean. We're going to take a look at hijab and identity and self-esteem. So these are all related to our overall mental health. So let's take a look a little bit now at depression. Depression can be described, as we said earlier, in terms of people losing their motivation, their energy, lack of hygiene, not being able to reach their full potential and interaction and engagement in their lives, and an overwhelming feeling of sadness that can last for a period of more than 2 to 3 weeks. So this is a very common illness that we all deal with. I mean, we all get times, we all get times where we feel sad or feel a little bit low. And so people automatically say, I feel depressed, when in reality, it could be a little bit more severe than just feeling depression, right? It could be that they are in fact dealing with the illness. And so I find this is very common, again, within our communities. And so when we have that in the older generation, because they don't talk about this topic.
It's normal.
It's normal for them. They don't realize that they are dealing with depression. Or people who've dealt with wars, who've lost, who've experienced a lot of trauma, may not realize that in fact they are dealing with depression. And so you have the youngsters who see their grandparents who live with them, because in our culture we have family that live with us, right? We don't send them off into homes. And so I find that the younger people will see symptoms in their elders and not recognize that it is in fact depression, or the elders themselves don't realize they're dealing with depression. You find that let's say women or men who are in unhappy marriages and relationships will experience this as well, but then they say, c'est la vie, that's life, I'm just going to deal with it and move on and toughen up, but they are dealing with depression.
Now you said that we have family members or older family members who live with us. Now can this be kind of a support system for the person who's depressed? They're always saying, no, you're not depressed, you're just feeling low, you're okay.
It can be supportive in the sense when you do have family who are telling you, yo, you've got this, you can handle it, you can deal with it, but the reality is, the young people are not going to go and ask their parents or reach out to them or get to them. And this is where sometimes the problems occur, when you don't ask for help. Why are these youngsters, or anybody really who's dealing, let's say, with depression, why are they not getting help? Why are they not reaching out, asking for it? Again, it's because of the misconceptions and the taboos. It can be support, like you said. Let's say they do go and ask for, or say, I'm not doing well, or the parents or the family notice that their child, their partner, or whomever, they're not at their full potential like they usually are. So perhaps they'll come and check them out or take them to the doctor. And so in that case, this is where support does come in. And we hope, that's what we hope that people can do. Anxiety is the other flip side of depression, where you're not as low energy. Anxiety is the opposite, where your heart is racing, where your heart is pumping, and you get sweats and chills and thoughts, just overwhelming thoughts, constant thoughts, and that are not stopping, and you're worried all the time. Tawaswas, right? So waswas, as we say in Arabic. So with anxiety, tawattur as well, these symptoms occur, or the symptoms of depression that we described. You're saying, how do I recognize that this is happening with me? I always, as a clinician, and see this in my patients or my clients, is if you are unable to reach your full potential and it disrupts your everyday function, then you're dealing with an illness. Again, I compare it to breaking your leg, compare it to when you are dealing with cardiovascular diseases or diabetes. If you notice this illness is preventing you from reaching your full potential, then yes, you need to do something about it to get the right help. So how do you know you're depressed? Well, if you've been sad for a long period of time, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're overeating, undereating, you're oversleeping, undersleeping, you're not going to school, you're missing work, you're not engaged in your society, you're not engaged in your community, you're not as active as you used to be, you don't go to the gym or work out like you used to be, and you're just sad all the time. This can lead to also thoughts of wanting to take your life, that you feel that you're hopeless, there's no point in living. You don't want to engage in life anymore. So these are the common symptoms that we encounter when we're dealing with depression.
Inshallah.
So when you know that you are not living at your full potential and engaged when it comes to mental illnesses, well, you know, what can you do? It's going to stop you, right? Or what you can do is get the actual help that you need. People don't know where to go if their child is depressed, or their child is talking about killing themselves, or they're into drugs, and that's another topic that we're going to take a look at, drugs and addictions. They don't know where to begin. What do? They go to the sheikh, they go to the imam, they say, my child is possessed, there's jinn in my child, or there's jinn in my wife, or you know, she doesn't want to come near me anymore, or so these are the misconceptions. Now, I'm not saying that these things do not exist, because we know it does exist in our faith. But where does it come to the point where you are actually going to go get medical help, the proper help? There's only so much that the sheikh can do in help, because it could be something that has to do with that.
Yeah, like you said, the broken leg.
The broken leg.
The sheikh is not going to fix your leg.
No, he's not, right? And reading Quran is not going to fix your leg. Yes, it will soothe your spirit in terms of, you know, working through the struggle.
But you still have the broken leg and the pain.
Absolutely. And so I always use that analogy when we talk about that, and also explaining it to my clients, or my clients of faith, not necessarily just Muslims, and say they're very much ashamed of, you know, I have this illness, how do I deal with this? And I'm like, well, you know, they say, I'm not praying, or how do I cope with that? You know, not a lot of people are going to be happy with what I have to say. I'll tell them, don't pray. And I'm a practicing Muslim, and I do believe prayer has a huge impact on your mental health and your well-being. I've done research in that, I presented on that. But if I have somebody in front of me who's broken a spirit, again, the analogy of the broken bone, is this person going to be strong enough or in the mental state in that moment to read Quran to heal themselves? No, they're not. They're going to need to get first diagnosed. See, what is it that they're dealing with? Is it a mood disorder? Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is it suicide? What is it that they're coping with? We take a look at that, then we take the next step. All right, so now we have an idea. Let's now get the proper treatment.